preach, and half of them don't know what they're talking about. So work with a team of people that you are confident, have the competence and experience, and know what the heck they're doing. You know, planning can make a lot of difference in business and in investing. And it is the same with you and I. A bit of planning now can go a long, long way. And I want to share some ideas with you about entity planning. And I'm going to talk briefly about partnerships, companies, and trusts, and share some ideas with you that I hope will be helpful. Those of you who were here yesterday heard this analogy of the layers on the onion, that when you peel back that crispy outer layer on an onion, two things become apparent. One is that crispy layer is kind of hard and brittle as a protective measure, and the second thing is a almost imperceptible chemical reaction begins to take place when you remove that outer layer. But it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And as the moments go by, your tears begin to flow, you're blinking, you know, your hands have got that stuff on it, and your face, it's almost like a natural tear gas in a sense, and you just want to get away from it. And so with that same concept, we want to have layers on an onion, so to speak, so that your legal adversary is in a tough spot, and they don't want to be hanging around too long dealing with you. The first layer would be the right type of trust. It might be a revocable living trust, and that's a great estate planning tool, but it's not a lawsuit protection tool. The second layer might be the limited partnership, specifically the most advanced version, which is called the limited liability limited partnership. I helped get that law passed here in Nevada. It gives you, as the managing general partner, the same degree of protection that the limited partners enjoy in a limited partnership. And then third is the operations layer. That's where we use the corporations and the LLC. That is who should be dealing with the general public. The owner of the corporation and the LLC should be your limited partnership. Why should we use a company to begin with? Well, it gives us a separate identity. It has its own tax ID number. It files its own, separate income taxes, separate from you in most cases. It has a separate legal liability pool of things to deal with. It is a separate entity in the eyes of the law. However, many trial attorneys try their darndest to get to apply what's called the rules of attribution, which is a fancy way of saying it's really you. And if you have your corporation in place, but you don't properly recognize and deal with the formalities of the corporation, it can be pierced, and then you can be held personally liable. One of the improvements on that is that the state of Nevada recently passed, and it went into effect this past July, David. That was the sole remedy statute now applies not only to LLCs here, but also to corporations. So that's a nice thing to have. In the way of tax savings, we can save a lot of money using a corporation or an LLC. A lot of things that we can do. Now, what about using a corporation? When does it make sense? I typically don't like to see real estate in a C corporation because C corporations don't get capital gains tax treatment. S corporations do, and I like S corporations if you have a lot of write-offs. For example, if you have some write-offs you want to take personally on your personal return from the business, certainly an S corporation works there. Here's about 3 or 4 things where an S corporation can be very helpful. If you want to take some business deductions on your personal return, an S corporation might be a good way to go, although it's not the only way. It's very good for property rehabbers. If you like to fix and flip properties, S corporations can be useful there. There's some savings on the self-employment tax, and that's usually the thing that is the knee-jerk reaction that many CPAs will bring up as soon as you talk about incorporating. And then if you have accelerated write-offs, for example, if you're in an oil and gas deal and you have those natural resource type of write-offs, an S corporation could do you a lot of good. Or if you're losing money, S corporations are real cool. So they can be very useful. They have their place. The limited liability company came to America from Germany about 20 years ago, and I was one of its early promoters here in the United States. These are great little companies. They have, they're sort of a hybrid, if you will. They've got some of the best aspects of corporate life, and they've got some of the flow-through benefits of partnership tax returns that enable us to do a lot of the same things, but with more flexibility and less formality. That's really the reason I like LLCs. Plus, for me, as an asset protection attorney, I like the fact that with a limited liability company, I don't have the same handcuffs on ownership restrictions that I do with a corporation sometimes. So it's going to depend on your individual situation. That's why I like to do strategic plans before I implement entities a lot of times. It's actually a growing national trend in the United States that we have more LLCs being formed every year than we do corporations. I think that's going to continue at least for the next 5 years, certainly. Which of these companies is best? It's going to depend on what you're trying to do. I use all of the above. I use S corporations, I use C corporations, and I use a lot of LLCs. It's going to depend on your personal circumstances and what's going on in your life to really see how it fits the best. I do a special report I'd be happy to send you. That's my email address. I'll send it to you for free. I kind of talk about corporations and LLCs and look at some of the differences, the pluses and minuses of each one of them. I'm happy to send that to you. Just shoot me a note at that email address and let me know you want it. Now, I'd like to move on to what should be the owner of your corporation on your LLC. I know you and I were talking about this earlier during the break, the limited liability, limited partnership. This has been adopted in about 7 or 8 states now, and I expect that within the next 10 years, all 50 states, even Louisiana, will have adopted it. This is a great way to go. It's a much more elegant solution. All of the states have limited partnerships, but only about 8 states so far have adopted the legislation for the limited liability, limited partnership. Now, here in Nevada, we actually have the nation's best law in that regard. Because of the privacy and the protection that it offers, I really like this particular entity. And this is how I'd like you to own your investments. I'd like you to have a limited liability, limited partnership, or triple LP, as we often refer to it. Have the triple LP be the owner of your stocks, your mutual funds, your options, that kind of thing. Have that be the direct owner. So, for example, with my broker, I called him up when I first set up mine years ago, and I said, pull out my file folder for my account, peel off my label, and put on a new label under the name of my partnership. Now, of course, he had me fill out a new account application and all that. It was a formality, but basically that's how I'd like to see your stocks and bonds and mutual funds owned directly by the limited partnership. Now, next to that, you'll see a green circle that says traditional LLC. That would own any commercial rental property that you have. If you have an office building, a strip mall, any kind of a commercial property, it should be held in the name of a traditional LLC, a standalone LLC. Next to that, you'll see a corporation that maybe owns a business, tire shop, retail shop, service business, plumbing business, you name it. That could be owned by a corporation. And then next to that, you see what's called a series LLC. This is an evolution in the area of the law regarding LLCs. Started in the state of Delaware, where